My name is David Murray. I'm from Deafblind Australia. Welcome to session number 3 for the peer mentoring training program. As I said before, I wanted to open up this session for any questions you may have regarding the last 2 sessions. I know some of you haven't been there, so it's good to hear out some of the questions you may have.
And do that acknowledgement of country.
Do you want me to do that again?
Yes.
Okay. Meredith just asked me to start this again, so I'll begin with acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting. I would like to pay respects to the elders, past and present. So, again, welcome everyone, and my name is David Murray, and I'm joined by Meredith Crane from Census Australia, and we have 2 interpreters with us, Dennis and Sarah. So just to remind everyone that we can only take questions through the chat box, the Alt H. So any questions you have, just type them through, and Sarah will read them out and we'll respond that way. So before I proceed with session 3, I would like to again ask everyone if you have any questions about the first 2 sessions we've had. So the first session...
She's gone. Meredith's gone.
Yeah. Just looking at Meredith, so she's disappeared. So I think the first session we talked about was the terms of reference and what's expected in the program, and how the session will be planned out, the matchmaking of mentees and mentors. Session 2, we covered communication, about the roadblocks and how to effectively listen. So listening skills and some of the examples of poor communication. So there's some of the things that we've covered in the first 2 sessions.
David, we've just had a comment from Wilma. Wilma has said it can be difficult to access the chat without a keyboard, but with an iPad, you can tap on the right top of the screen icon. Second from the right is for chatting. And then you can go down to the white chat box if that helps anyone.
Can everyone hear Sarah speaking there? For those that didn't hear Sarah, Wilma had put some information down about her challenges with accessing the keyboard, but she's able to use her iPad. And if you do have an iPad, on the top right hand screen, there's an icon second from the right, and that's where you can enter into the chat box. Thank you, Wilma, for providing that information. I'll give a few moments just to give someone an opportunity to type in the chat box. I think everyone's okay to continue with today's session, but we can always come back to questions throughout the session. So I would like to begin today's session is about goal setting. And we'll be covering 5 different areas. You would have had some documents sent out to you, and these are the documents you have will be some of the things we'll cover today. So we'll be looking at wellness assessment, which I will cover. This is an important tool to help identify a person's current well-being and the background details. This will help us get a better understanding of the experiences and feelings of the person. So I'll talk more about that when that comes up. The next part will be around United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. We'll be talking about the themes that are important for participants to look at. So Meredith will talk about this, how the United Nations theme will help you identify the different areas that may involve your participation equally.
Just swap interpreters.
Oh,
We can do interpreter swap.
We have Paula.
Paula's popped up on the screen.
Give her a wave on.
I think she's just watching, yeah.
Okay, I'm just a bit distracted. We had a screen change with my partner Paola. Hello. So the next part we'll be covering is personal development, and that will be about identifying, the skills required to help us achieve those goals. And I'll be explaining some examples around a template that we'll use to help the mentees and mentor follow a guideline of the goals you want to accomplish. And the last part Meredith will cover is around SMART goals. So Meredith will talk about what SMART means, and that's something to help measure our goals. So now I will begin with talking about the wellness assessment. So this wellness assessment is like an assessment to look at the strengths and how to increase the potential. So there are a few areas that we can look at. So we can look at personal and mental health. So this looks at how physical active are you? How confident are you in being healthy with food, exercise, regular sleep? Do you have enough energy throughout the day? Do you eat vegetables 7 times a day? So those things are around the physical health. So we look at what are your strengths around that area. So when we look at these different areas under physical health, you mark from 1 to 5. So if you, for example, feel motivated to choose healthy food options, and you might say, yes, I eat non-fat, lots of vegetables, a balanced diet, then you would choose around 4 and 5. But if you feel you're not eating healthy, you eat chips and lollies or something that's not balanced, then you would choose 1 or 1 to 2. And those are the areas 1 to 2 is something you can improve on to reach your strengths of 4 and 5 to eat better and healthy. So we also look at mental health. So how do we manage stress? How do we seek help if we're feeling stressed? Are we aware of the resources, the information that can help us cope with stress? And do you have ways of knowing how to relax and without feeling upset? So this is some of the areas that we can look at around mental health, and you can grade yourself from 1 to 5. So this is something we'll use later on when you're matched with a mentee and mentors to help identify the strengths. So it's a good way to look at all these areas to help prepare, help you prepare and identify those strengths. And the other area we'll look at is health seeking and resilience. So this is about knowing how to ask for help. How well do you ask a friend or a family member? So if there's something that was bothering you, what will you do to help yourself? Would you seek a medical professional, a mental health professional? And you can look at how do you cope with healthy ways with demands of work, schoolwork, and your personal life, and how you can manage that in a healthy way. And how you can look at places for support if you're struggling to cope. And also understanding your strengths, your resilience, and areas that need improvement. So that's some of the things you look at under help seeking and resilience. We can look at help, connection and community. So this looks at your hobbies, your personal interests that keeps you happy. Also talks about, do you manage your time to do these hobbies and interests that make you happy? Do you have connections with a friend who's open-minded and very supportive? Do you have a positive, supportive network through family and friends? Do you feel socially connected to your community? So these are the areas that we can look at to help you identify the strengths from 1 to 5. So we don't have to worry about this now, but just to help you understand what we expected, to help map out what your strengths are, and look at how we can improve the ones that are potentials. So it's Meredith here.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, but now I'd like to ask anyone if they've got any questions at all around the wellness assessment. So the information on explaining how this is going to work, any question you may have, please type in your chat box, Alt-H, or if you have an iPad, go up to top of the top corner, second from the right, click on that, and then a chat box will be in the bottom. Just so everyone know, I can see Heather on the screen, and I can see my home.
Heather Lawson's group is trying to work out how to fix the sound. She doesn't know about the chat.
That's right.
Can
Can I swap?
Craig,
Can I swap over? I'll swap with you. Can Meredith swap with you, David?
Yeah. Do you want me to introduce your part now?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Heather can hear
We'll
us.
hold off there's no questions so far. So I would like to now go to the next part, and Meredith Prame will talk about the United Nations Convention for People with Disabilities around the themes. This will help us identify the areas that we can work on with goal setting. So Meredith?
Hello, everybody. I know that someone's joined late, and so I just want to go through a roll call again so everybody knows who is online now, because there are a few different people. So we're not able to see on the screen.
Jennifer Weir,
There's Jennifer Weir,
Stephen Hallinan,
Stephen Hallinan,
Wilma,
Wilma Brass,
Carol,
Carol Brown,
Heather Lawson,
Heather Lawson,
Paula.
Paola Avila.
That's all I can see.
Okay, so that's everybody that's online. I also just wanted to let everybody know, particularly those who joined us late, we are having technical difficulties here at Expression Australia, and we can't get any audio. So if you have a question or comment, the only way to give that question or comment is typing in the chat section. So you can either click on the chat at the bottom or press Alt-H on your keyboard and type the chat message in, or as David said, go to the top right on the iPad to bring up the chat box. So I just wanted to explain we're not having any signing or audio today because it's not working at this end. So I'm sorry about that. So now what David has just gone through, the wellness assessment, again, I wanted to thank Blind Citizens Australia. I thanked them last time. We're using a lot of the resources that they have shared with us for our mentoring program that they used for theirs. And so the wellness assessment has come from Blind Citizens Australia. And it's really just a tool to help you work out what goals you might have. Sometimes you think, oh, goals, what are my goals? And I think the NDIS is helping people to think more about goals. And so that's also why I have shared with you all the United Nations different themes, because we used a tool for helping people develop their NDIS goals, because it covers many of the domains of life and helps you to start thinking if there are any areas that you would like to work on. Some of them won't necessarily be relevant for mentoring, but it just might be worthwhile for you to identify if there's something you want to work on. So some of the wellness issues, if there are mental health or more social issues you might as we talked in the first session, want to seek different sort of assistance with that rather than mentoring. But it's just a useful guide to start getting you thinking about what goals you might have for mentoring. So I hope most of you, if not all of you, have received the handouts that I sent out on Monday, and it included this list of these different domains. So the domains are housing, where you think about where you're currently living, if it's got good proximity to your social networks and to public transport, if it's a good size for you. The next one is home and family, so who you're living with, if you have pets, if you want a pet. These probably aren't things you would want to explore in mentoring, but it's just worth having a think about all of these aspects of life. The next one is recreation, sports and leisure. There might be something you're wanting to explore in that area that you might want to discuss with a mentor, but just thinking about what you're doing currently, if there are things you've been interested in but nervous or not sure how to go about starting a new hobby or recreation activity. Some of the next ones are things that I think might be more likely to come up in mentoring. So education, if thinking about how you learn things, or if there are particular skills or knowledge that you'll want to develop and how you might go about that, whether it's through a formal course and investigating what courses are around, if it might be a TAFE course or an adult education course, or if there is online information or online courses or just other resources that you might go to learn from. So thinking about education, if there are particular areas of interest or things that you want to learn. Health and well-being is another area, and that's covered quite strongly in the wellness assessment that David just covered with you. Employment is another area that you might want to look at, and employment doesn't just include paid employment, but also voluntary employment. So you might be volunteering at the moment and want to have more challenges or opportunities in your current voluntary role, or paid role. You might have a paid role but be looking at changing that and moving into a different area. Or you might be looking at starting too fast.
No.
Swap. Yep. Okay. Okay. So we're just talking about employment. So it might be looking at developing more skills in your paid work or your voluntary work, or looking at different paid work or different voluntary work. So thinking in that area. And just how, like, employment sort of covers occupation, how you are occupied during your day. The next one is income and finance. So even looking at budgeting perhaps, managing finances. And again, this probably wouldn't really come up in mentoring. It might come up and the mentor might have some ideas or other places to go to refer you to. The next one I think potentially would be one for mentoring, which is public and political life. So that might be being involved in advocacy groups and being involved in government processes, how you put in a submission, or presenting conferences at conference papers at conferences, things like that. So how you're involved out as a public figure in the world, and perhaps being a leader out in your community. That might be something to consider with the mentoring relationship that you're in. So the last two are cultural life, which really is, it could be religion or religious aspects of the culture, of your own culture, or it could relate to food or cooking, or just festivals or music, anything to do with your own culture. That's quite a broad thing, and Australia has very diverse culture and different cultures within our culture. So I guess thinking what culture means to you and how you're involved in culture, if it's going to the theatre or going to movies, things like that. Just something to stop and think about. How do I express myself or participate in cultural activities? And the last one is social life and friends. So reflecting upon that in your life, if it's if you want more, or how you manage your friendships and maintain friendships and social connections. So how you interact, whether it's maintaining regular contact face-to-face or via social media. I think some people with deafblindness aren't involved as much in social media because it can be difficult to access. So maybe even talking to your mentor about other social media options. There are many different ones available now. So perhaps having a conversation about that. It's all just options and things to reflect upon and think, is there something in this particular theme that I think I would like to work on? So that's that section. I'll hand back to David now to look at development plans and actually putting all of your ideas into a structured plan.
Thank you, Meredith. But as you can see, some of the themes that Meredith talked about, this gives you a good idea to map some of the areas of your life where you can fit in each of those sections. So there might be something that you want to build upon. So we've organised a template, a personal development plan, which will help you outline what's important to you, what you want to achieve, what strengths you already have that help you achieve your goals, and what you need to improve and develop with time. So this template will have different sections where you will list some of the things you want to accomplish. So the first line on top of this template says, my first major goal. So if you look at the themes and look at what areas in the themes that might appeal to you. So one of the things that Meredith talked about is education. So let's use education as an example. So give it a name, my first goal. I will make important progress on my formal education by the end of 2020. So that's your goal. So to help achieve that goal, we map out what skills and knowledge you need to improve to get that goal. So that is enroll into internet-based program, enroll into TAFE, or in a community college. So that's the first step. Then you write down, how did you do that? Then you would write, I've applied and I received a correspondence letter to say that I applied for a course. Then you look at how will you gain and develop. So that's around development activities. So you look at researching the web, contact potential, submit transcript, identification, and best apply. So that's one way of developing your development activity. Now, who will help you with your development? So the potential mentor will be a person named Mary, who did this last year. He might suggest a course or suggest a website to look at. And then you write down when will you complete this, to the end of 3rd month. So the next part you would follow is you complete your course or the degree. So you write that down, you completed it. And how did you receive the course, the qualification? Is through grades. Do you receive B+? So you write down B+, so that's your final grades. And the activities you did was all the assignments. So you write down all the assignments you did. And doing the future assignments as well. And who will be the mentor to help you do those assignments. And this example had Jack, who's a retired teacher. He will assist you with doing those assignments. So this is a timeline set up for end of 6 to 9 months. So this is the goals that you're setting for this course. So then you look at completing the electives that may count towards the degree, like doing extra training. That could add additional qualifications. And what did you get to achieve those electives? What were the results? And then doing all the assignments. And it's saying here, teach my sister the tough subject. And the potential mentors with my spouse, the assigned instructor. So you can complete that by the end of 2019. So these are the templates that you can use to help plan your goals. So that's one example around education. And you can also apply that to other areas, such as Meredith mentioned. Such as your social life, you want to build your networks. So then you would go through with your mentor, with developing a plan, how you would accomplish that and when you want to get it done by. So this is something to think about throughout this program, with all the ideas you might think about with developing your skills and increase your community participation. So you can just have a look at them now, or you can just wait until you're matched with a mentor and discuss your ideas. And then you can plan your personal development skills by using this template. So we can, if you have any questions about these templates, we can still work through them if you're not sure about them or how it works. We can still guide you through the program. So is everyone okay with our personal development plan? Do you have any questions at all before I hand over to Meredith? Okay. So now I'm going to ask Meredith to come and talk about SMART goals. Meredith?
Thank you, David. That was just an example with the educational focus, but really it's just a template to help guide you in the process. with mentoring. I think the clearer you can set goals and the clearer you can be about the plan forward, the better success you have, and the more you can see the steps that you've taken and the little successes that you have along the way. So I expect some of you, if not all of you, have heard of SMART goals. So it's called SMART goals. It sort of sounds like clever goals, but it's SMART goals, and each of those letters stands for something to help you remember some things to consider when you're setting your goals, to make sure that they're very clear and will help when they're very clear, it will help you to meet them. So the S in SMART goals stands for specific. I know them pretty well off the top of my head, but I had a mental block. Specific. So if you say, I want to be really good at my job, that is not a specific goal, because any job is very broad and has a lot of different elements. Or I want to make new friends. That's quite broad and general as well. So really narrowing it down, and I thought I would ask for a suggestion, but I think the communication between us is a bit difficult today. So I just was thinking about, I've mentored a lot of speech pathologists, and they often come with the goal of wanting to feel more confident with a particular client group. And that's pretty broad and not that specific. Confidence, how do you measure confidence? So we often talk it through and think, well, what would confidence look like? And let's look at the exact client group. So, okay, you want to feel more comfortable working with children with profound disabilities. So something to get more specific is, I know I can tell you 5 different intervention approaches, and I know 3 really good resources that I can use. So coming up and getting that specific and going away and doing the research and knowing those tools, and or even saying I have used 3 different intervention techniques. So getting that specific so that you really know what you're going for. This is useful for the mentee and the mentor. So the clearer the mentee is on what they're wanting to achieve, the more they can work towards it. But the mentor also knows and can help each time you meet to come back to that very clear goal and look at the steps you've taken in getting towards it. So that's specific, getting very specific. The M stands for measurable. And I come back to that example of confidence. I want to feel more confident as a presenter, or I want to feel more confident doing this. How do you measure confidence? And you might, like, coming up with some really clear things to measure can help you know if you've achieved your goal. So I gave that example of, I can name 5 different interventions, ways to treat children or work with children, and 3 resources that are useful to share with your parents. Like, that's very measurable. You can say, yep, this one, yep, we've got 5 there. Yep, we've got 3 resources. Great, now you know those, and they're part of the services that you can provide. So with, you know, I want to feel more confident as a presenter. To make that measurable, maybe it's, I didn't lose my train of thought. Like, some things that you can, like, yes or no, yes, or I didn't shake after the first 5 minutes. I don't know, something that you can measure. Or I didn't shake at all. Like, building all of these things are a process. So if you're wanting to be doing a lot of public speaking, you want to start to have some practices. Or I felt comfortable or I got through my whole presentation and I didn't lose my train of thought. I did it in the right time and I didn't miss any points. Thinking about those very specific things that you can measure. Yep, tick, tick, tick. You didn't lose your train of thought. You covered everything you wanted and you didn't shake. Something like that. And you might do a practice with your mentor. You might do a practice with some friends, and then you might actually do a presentation for a group that you don't know. So building up in steps like that and checking what does confidence mean to you. And it's different for everybody. You know, we all have different way that nerves affect us. So exploring that and looking at what confidence means. So measuring it. And I think with the university or the course, the education one, I will have explored 3 different courses and looked at, you know, how much they cost when they start. Having things that you can measure, that you can clearly say, yes, check off, yep, I've done that. And yes, we achieved our goal, something that you can measure. So the A and R are a bit similar. A is achievable. So talking through with your mentor, is this something that is actually possible? Like, I'm hoping that none of our mentees say, well, you know, it is possible to go to Mars these days. Who knows? I know they're recruiting for that. But something that you know is possible, that you know other people have done it, and especially, you know, maybe other people with deaf blindness have done it, and looking internationally for examples and knowing that this is a possible goal. R is realistic, and I think realistic often comes to time frames. I've read before that often we overestimate what we can achieve in a year, but underestimate what we can achieve in our lifetime or 5 years. Sometimes things take longer than we expect. So that would be something to talk through with your mentor. What's a reasonable time frame to be achieving the goal? So timely comes into it there. You definitely want to set time frames. So with the presentation, I want to feel confident presenting, or I want to know for sure that I can deliver a good presentation, and then define what good is. Like, you might want to get feedback from your audience that I get an average rating of 4 out of 5 or 3.5 out of 5, whatever it is that you want to measure. And so with the time, the T in SMART, you might say, I will get a good rating, or I will not shake, or I will deliver all the key points that I wanted to 5 people by the end of January. And set some really clear time frames. I will do this by January, I will do this by March, I will do this by June. So setting up the little steps that it's going to take to reach your overarching goal. And I think that's an important role of the mentor, is to help you in setting these goals and using those SMART principles: the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. So making sure you're thinking about all of those things when you go to put your goal and your plan into the development plan that David has just gone through. And there's just suggestions as well. I mean, you can do it in your own way if doing it this way really is not something that will work for you. But I certainly find trying to be very specific, because then you can really celebrate your success and see very clearly that you've done what you plan to do, and that you've got a plan working towards that big goal of perhaps a conference presentation where you get a good rating, or feel like, yeah, not nervous, and that you cover all the key points, or whatever it is to you that means you've done a good presentation. It really comes back to you knowing what it is that you're going for and what that will look like. So I think that's all the key. Just do an interpreter swap. That's all the key things that David and I wanted to cover today. But I would like to throw it open to people, and even if they have an idea of a goal and they want to, we could workshop it and look at how we turn it into a SMART goal, how you would start to develop a plan. I'll also do a decent pause now, because I know we've got someone using tactile sign language, so it's very hard for the interpreters to stop and pause, and we just need to take a full pause so there's no other information. So perhaps I just want to make sure, Heather, if one of your interpreters can type into the chat on the screen. So we'll just pause now. But over to you also, Heather, if you have any comments or questions, or even to just type no comments, just so I can make sure everyone is able to use that chat and make sure everyone can participate if they want to. So we'll just pause now.
Unfortunately, we can't. Sorry, that's coming from Heather Lawson.
Oh, but that's in the chat?
A video
Oh,
of
video.
her
We can see her
interpreter.
signing.
Okay. So
There's
a-
no comment area for me to type into what the
Okay.
Lawson's interpreter is saying.
So I'll explain to the interpreter.
But
Yeah.
can Heather comment now if she moves towards where you are, because I can't see Heather as she is at the moment? Heather would like to relay and sign her question. Move her a bit to the right. A little bit further to the right.
Dennis, we can change it on our settings. If you click on Heather.
Participants. Heather. Yes. Pin video.
Yes. But we'll need to unpin.
Okay, I can see
Okay.
Heather clearly now.
All right. So we can see you. Yep.
Hello. Okay, are we ready? Yes, hello. I'm Heather Lawson. I know some new... I want to say congratulations for the information summarised. I feel that if deafblind people want to be involved more in depth, maybe at a more relaxed time. I think the summary that's been given today has been very good.
Okay. Can you change it back to Pinos, perhaps?
VRI room.
It's Meredith speaking. Thank you, Heather. Great. So, and I do have an answer to your question from the last session. So that was a really good suggestion you made, Heather, to put all of the handouts that we've been sending you for each session, put it into one book so it's easy to find. So we will be doing that for everybody, and we can braille it. So we will do that for you.
Another message has come through from Jennifer saying a smart goal that I would like to achieve is learning to do database on computers.
Ah, thank you, Jennifer. That's a great example. So just thinking, okay, wanting to do database on computers, that's quite a broad general goal. So I guess to make it specific, you could say exactly, like come up with 2 or 3 examples of a database that you want to manage. And then, so the measurable part, so maybe the goal is that I can manage the database for A, B, and C, or just A. And over a 3-month period, or some sort of time period, I'm able to manage it to the point where I don't need to ask questions, something like that.
Another message from Carol Brown saying it's great to hear about SMART goals, clapping now.
Ah, thank you for that feedback, Carol.
Wilma has a message. Yay, Jennifer, thank you.
Okay, and I'm thinking that it might be for the Deafblind West Australians database. So getting really specific about which database you want to manage, the size of the database, what in it you want to be able to do, getting very clear about that. So that's your S for specific. The measurable would be, again, with that confidence, like knowing how to manage a database. I think there's lots of different databases. Would you have it on Excel, or would you use other software, or is that part of the goal, is to explore databases and even decide which the best one is? that's like a mini goal in the overarching goal, and ask around, see which ones are most accessible, so that if someone takes over, that they are able to access it easily, thinking things like that. So the measurable might be that by some specific time, you are able to manage the regular functions, update it, get information from it easily, get really clear on the things that you want to be able to do it. So you can measure it and say, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I have learnt that. The A, that sounds like an achievable and realistic goal. And then your time frames, that'll be around working out what is reasonable to you. Like, at what point would you have wanted to decide which database you want to use? At what point do you want to have all your data entered into the database? And at what point do you want to feel like you are able to extract information and manage the database? So something like that. Does that sort of sound about right to you, Jennifer, making your goals smart?
No,
Nothing's come through. There's no other messages up there?
No.
Does anybody else have a goal they'd like to share? Or do they even want to type in their specific?
No.
Craig, can you type just so I know that our chat's still working and flowing?
Jennifer has said,
Yeah.
sorry, Zoom tech playing up, but the information you have just given is great.
Oh, thank you for that feedback, Jennifer. Okay, well, and now we know that it is still working.
Craig has typed yes.
Okay, great. We're still online with everybody, and I'm sorry about the technical issue today. I'm missing hearing your voices.
I think Carol is typing madly there. I'll just wait there.
Okay.
Carol Brown says, will you make a book about smart meaning and more simple English to understand both English and Braille?
Yes, Carol, can I just check that you received the handouts that we sent out? I've been sending the handouts each Monday before the Wednesday session, and I've been sending it to everybody who's registered for the workshops. So if there's anybody online that hasn't received it, please let me know. There were just 5 handouts this week. Carol, did you receive that? Because that clearly lists the SMART goals and gives some examples.
Yes, I did.
Did you get a chance to read it? Was it clear enough?
Yes.
Okay, that will definitely go into the book. Every handout that we've given you will go into the manual that we'll put together, and we'll have all the page numbers. So, and it will have the acknowledgements. Most of the resources that we've been sharing have just been slightly adapted from Blind Citizens Australia. Some of them have got a bit pale print, or they're a bit too focused on blind and not focused on deafblind. But the SMART goals came from a website, and the United Nations themes came from a different resource as well. So we'll put the references so you know where to get that information as well. So I'll just pause for a moment now and just check if there's any other comments or questions on setting goals, which is the main purpose of today, and setting a plan, a mentoring plan. Did you have anything you wanted to add, David? Yeah,
Not at this
okay.
stage, no.
Yep, okay.
Stephen, Helena?
Stephen Helen says, I have a question relating to well-being.
Yes, please, if you could type it out for us, Stephen.
You might refer to the wellbeing assessment, maybe.
Yes, I expect so.
We have access to everyone's videos now. So if they want to sign. Carol's just
I
gone.
prefer
Oh, no,
not,
she's there.
because it's not
That's
fair
fine.
for the audio.
That's
Like,
fine.
I just try and make it really even. I agree, it's easier.
That's okay. Okay, we've lost.
Stephen, did you, I guess the other thing to remind everybody, you're always welcome to email David or myself offline if you have questions that you don't want to ask in front of the group, or if you think of something later. And we're going to be available up until June for support through the mentoring program anyway.
Stephen Helen. Having fun hitting the wrong keys. Question is about resources. Do you have any resources on Hub, for example?
It's Meredith speaking. So the mentoring program is a bit separate from the Hub. The mentoring resources aren't going on the Hub because mentoring is kind of a separate topic, and most of the Hub is set up for information about deafblindness and information about NDIS. That's right. Thank you, David, teaching me my job. So the mentoring program we're keeping quite separate, but perhaps David and I could talk that potentially is something that could be hosted on the DBA website. So certainly we will develop that resource, which would be available to anybody upon request that we can send out to you. And with all of those resources that we've sent to you already. So I guess it would be something that you would contact for us, but not necessarily that we would store on the website. I hope that makes sense, just because it's a slightly separate to the key business of the organisations. I hope that answers your question. And I also hit lots of wrong keys when I'm typing. It's definitely much easier to talk, and I hope we'll have the audio working next week for our last week.
Stephen Helen said, I'm thinking specifically about health.
Can you elaborate, Stephen, on what you mean by
resources on Hub, for example, I think he's relating to.
So the Deafblind Hub relates specifically to deafblindness. So there would be information a little bit about eye and ear health, but beyond that, not so much. I guess it's something we would direct you to other websites, because health is an extremely broad topic. So it would depend what aspect of health you were thinking about. So as David said, the Hub is very much focused on information for people with deafblindness and people who work with people with deafblindness. So lots of information very specific to deafblindness, and also about the NDIS. Not so much on those other broad topics, but I guess it's something for Deafblind Australia to consider. I hope that answers your question. But if it doesn't, let me know.
From Stephen, I'll follow up later, but was thinking where people go for advice about wellbeing.
It's Meredith speaking. I think that's potentially something to speak to a mentor about. So in our very first session, when we were talking about what is a mentor and what a mentor is not. So a mentor is not a counsellor. They are not a health professional, and there are a lot of links to different health organisations. And certainly if the mentee was raising a lot of health issues, the mentor's first port of call would be to refer them to their GP. But there's a huge amount of information about health and wellbeing on the website. I guess the wellness questionnaire it doesn't all focus on health. It focuses on all aspects of mental and social wellbeing. So just as a way of starting to think about any areas that you might want to work on. And you might raise it with a mentor and they might give you some suggestions of where to go for that. So potentially to your GP, but also they might have some ideas about websites on health that they've looked at, or talking about what they know of networks that different things that people do to keep healthy and maintain their health. I hope that addresses it. I think it is tricky for the mentor to get clear on what they can offer, and but also being very clear that they're not there to answer every possible question or to know the answer to everything. It's mostly, like we talked about last time, being a very good communicator and rephrasing back and helping the person work it out themselves. Often the person has the answers anyway, or usually, and sometimes it's just that guiding and the opportunity to have a conversation, to think more about it, and for them to come up with their own direction and own ideas about where to next. So do we have any other final questions or comments? It's looking like no. I just allow plenty of time because it can take a while to navigate around your computer. Or especially if you're using, we'll check back in with you, Heather. Did you have anything else you wanted to say or add before we start to wind up? Can you see, Heather?
I can.
Okay. So you can just wave a yes or a no.
Okay, we've got Heather on screen. So, hi again. I know there's a technical problem, but next week, if you could send out an email with the agenda, I want to say congratulations for the information. It was really good. And other ideas that I have is Braille, like all the information in a Braille book, maybe, to make sure that you can access. And maybe we can set up a bit of a library or something, some resources to hand out later.
It's Meredith. We will be compiling all of the information we've sent you. So I'm glad to hear that you received the information we sent, but we will be putting it all together into one deafblind mentoring program manual, and we can produce that in Braille. So it will take us a little while, but we will get it to you in the coming weeks. Thank you, Heather. I think some of the resources in there are just useful to think about anyway, even if you're not in the mentoring program. So if there's no further questions or comments, and do feel free to jump on while I'm talking if you think of something, or wave. If you're on, we're seeing a few people's cameras. So next session will be our last workshop, the last training session. There's just a few more resources we want to share with you, and we will send them out next Monday. Heather, that's a good idea, the agenda. Usually the agenda is just going through in a bit more detail and talking you through the resources, so you're more familiar with the information and know where to go back to find it. So we'll be sharing a few more resources that are just helpful for anybody in a mentoring relationship, and also talk about next steps, where to from here, in terms of deciding if you want to be a mentee or a mentor in the program, and what the next steps would be with being matched with a partner. Or if you're a mentee that's worked out some goals, even how we go about finding a suitable mentor for you. And I know, again, I just want to reiterate, I know that the community is small, so we would only match you with someone you knew if you requested it, and we would certainly take into account. We would run it all past you first before matching anybody up. Because you need to feel very safe and comfortable with the person, because you're sharing personal information, so you need to have that level of trust. No other comments?
Carol Brown says, I missed out on sessions 1 and 2 last time. I am sorry, but I'm glad to hear now is session 3.
It's great to have a couple of new people joining. I know there's been a few people who are very keen to be in the program, and they will be very welcomed in the program. I've been sending a few people the links to the recordings and also the transcript. So for all of the workshops, we have a recording with the audio and the sign and the captions, and we also have a full transcript. So I can send those to you, Carol, so you can look at the first and second sessions.
Wilma's just saying, thanks for all the handouts. See you next week.
Great. Thank you, Wilma. Hopefully we'll see and hear you all next week. We're still not sure what's gone wrong. I know that was working today, so we still haven't got to the bottom of what it was. But it's been good the last 2 sessions, so I expect it will be fine again next week. David, did you have any final words or comments? No? All good? All right. Well, thank you as always to Sarah and to Dennis, and particularly today for taking on the extra role of reading out the messages. Thanks to Craig for tech behind the scenes, and to Lee for captioning. And thank you, David, for sharing this journey. Thank you to you all as well. It wouldn't be any good if you didn't log on. So we really appreciate you attending and for your input. Thank you. We'll see you next week for the last session, same time, 4 o'clock, Wednesday the 13th. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for